So the topic that I will discuss, it's all about the cardiovascular and lymphatic systems and their defenses. So the first is cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is the pipeline of the body. It is composed of the blood vessels which carry blood to and from all regions of the body, and the heart which pumps the blood. The cardiovascular system provides tissue with oxygen and nutrients and carries away carbon dioxide and waste products, delivering them to the appropriate organs for removal. A closely related but largely separate system, the lymphatic system, is a major source of immune cells and fluids, and it serves as a one-way passage returning fluid from the tissues to the cardiovascular system. The heart is a fist-sized muscular organ that pumps blood through the body. It is divided into two halves, each, each of which is divided into an upper and lower chamber. The upper chambers are called atria or atrium, and the lower are ventricles. The entire organ is encased in a fibrous covering, the pericardium, which is an occasional site or infection. The actual wall of the heart has three layers. From outer to inner, they are the epicardium, the myocardium, and the endocardium. The endocardium also covers the halves of the heart, and it is relatively common target of microbial infection. The atria receive blood coming from the body. This blood, which is low in oxygen and high in carbon dioxide, enters the right atrium and passes through to the right ventricle. The blood vessel consists of arteries, veins, and capillaries. Arteries carry oxygenated blood away from the heart under relatively high pressure. They branch into smaller vessels called arterioles. The innermost layer is composed of a smooth epithelium called endothelium. The outside layer is a thin layer of connective tissue. Capillaries, the smallest vessels, have small made of only one layer to endothelium. So the lymphatic system consists mainly of the lymph vessels, which roughly parallel to the blood vessels. Lymph nodes which cluster at body site, such as the groin, neck, armpit, and intestine, and the spleen. This system serves to collect fluid that has left the blood vessels and entered tissues, filter it of impurities and infectious agents, and return it to the blood. So let's proceed in defenses of the cardiovascular and lymphatic systems. So the cardiovascular system is highly protected from microbial infection. Microbes that successfully invade the system, however, gain access to every part of the body, and every system may potentially be affected. For this reason, bloodstream infections are called systemic infections. The blood is a pool of leukocytes with approximately 5,000 to 10,000 white blood cells with per millimeter of blood. The various types of white blood cells include the lymphocytes, responsible for specific immunity, and the phagocytes, which are critical to non-specific as well as specific immune responses. That said, a handful of infection agents have nonetheless evolved exquisite mechanisms for avoiding blood-borne defenses. So let's proceed in normal biota of the cardiovascular and lymphatic system. Like the nervous system, the cardiovascular and lymphatic system are closed systems with no normal access to the external environment. Therefore, current science believes they possess no normal biota. In the absence of disease, microorganisms may be transiently present in either system as just described. The lymphatic system serves to filter microbes and their product out of tissues. Thus, in the healthy state, no microorganism colonize either the lymphatic or cardiovascular systems. Of course, this is biology and it is never quite that simple. Recent data from the Human Microbiome Project suggests that the bloodstream is not completely sterile even during periods of apparent health. It is tempting to speculate that these low-level microbial infections may contribute to disease for which no infection cause has previously had been found. Thank you.
Good day to all of you. I'll be discussing about the cardiovascular and lymphatic system diseases caused by the microorganisms. So we'll start with endocarditis. Endocarditis is the inflammation of your heart's inner lining, called the endocardium. This condition is also called as infective endocarditis. It is usually caused by bacteria. Endocarditis is uncommon in people with healthy hearts. So there are two types of endocarditis. The other one is acute and the other one is subacute. Acute infective endocarditis develops suddenly and may become life-threatening within days, while subacute infective endocarditis develops gradually over a period of weeks to several months, but it is also life-threatening. So here are the symptoms: fever, anemia, abnormal heartbeat, similar symptoms with myocardial infarction, shortness of breath, chills, abdominal pain, side pains, and they may look very ill and may have small red to purple spots over the upper half of the body and under the fingernails. Red, painless skin spots on the palms and soles, small painful nodes on the pads of fingers and toes. Take note that subacute condition they develop more slowly and are pronounced than with the acute diseases. So here are the causative agents responsible in endocarditis. In acute endocarditis, it is Staphylococcus aureus, Streptococcus pyogenes, S. pneumoniae, Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and more. In subacute endocarditis, the most common is alpha hemolytic streptococci or others. So it is transmitted by, in acute endocarditis, it is parenteral, which means it is administered or occurring elsewhere in the body than the mouth and alimentary canal. In subacute endocarditis, minor disruption in the skin or mucous membrane by vigorous toothbrushing, dental procedures, or relatively minor cuts and lacerations. Culture or diagnosis. It is blood culture. A blood culture is a test that looks for germs such as bacteria or fungi in the blood. Blood culture, if positive, are the gold standards for diagnosis. We can prevent this disease by, in acute, aseptic surgery to avoid the introduction of bacteria in the bloodstream. Subacute, practice of prophylactic antibiotic therapy in advance of surgical and dental procedures on patients. So, how can we treat this disease? So, here are the treatments. In acute, recommended antibiotics are nafcillin or oxacillin with or without gentamicin. Alternatively, vancomycin in combination with gentamicin can be used. In subacute, same with acute treatment. Septicemia. Septicemia is a serious bloodstream infection. It is also known as bacteremia or blood poisoning. Septicemia occurs when a bacterial infection elsewhere in the body, such as in the lungs or skin, enters the bloodstream. This is dangerous because the bacteria and their toxins can be carried through the bloodstream to your entire body. The symptoms of this disease is fever, very ill, altered mental state, shaking chills, gastrointestinal symptoms, increase in breathing rate, respiratory alkalosis, low blood pressure. So, what are the causative agents of septicemia? Septicemia is caused by an infection in other part of your body. This infection is typically severe. Many types of bacteria can lead to septicemia. The exact source of the infection can't be determined. It may be bacteria or fungi. So it can be transmitted by parenteral, may arise from serious urinary tract infection, renal, prostatic, pancreatic, gallbladder abscess, meningeal infection, bone infection, and pneumonia. Plague. Plague is a bacterial infection found mainly in rodents and their fleas, but via those fleas it can be sometimes leap to humans. When it does, the outcome can be horrific, making the plague outbreaks the most notorious disease episode in history. The causative agent of this disease is Yersinia pestis. It can be transmitted by fleas, cultured or diagnosed by rapid genomic method. It can be prevented by having a vaccine. It can be treated by streptomycin and gentamicin. Tularemia. Tularemia is a rare infectious disease that typically attacks the skin, eyes, lymph nodes, and lungs. Tularemia is also called as rabbit fever or deer fly fever. The symptoms may show up or after a few days to 3 weeks. Here are the acute symptoms: headache, backache, fever, chills, weakness, ulcerative skin lesions, swollen lump glands, conjunctival inflammation, sore throat, intestinal disruption, or pulmonary involvement. The causative agent of this disease is Francisella tularensis. The chief route of transmission in the past had been through the activity of skinning rabbits, but with the decline of rabbit hunting, transmission is via tick is more common. Culture or diagnosis of this disease is to lab workers and not reliable. Serology most often used. Prevention of this disease is live attenuated vaccine for high-risk individuals, but research in this area is still ongoing. Treatment, it can be treated by streptomycin or gentamicin. Lyme disease. Lyme disease is a bacterial infection primarily transmitted by ticks, also known as deer ticks, and on the west coast, blackleg ticks. These tiny arachnids are typically found in woody and grassy areas. Its symptoms are it mimics neuromuscular and rheumatoid conditions. At the site of the tick bite, lesion called erythema migrans, fever, headache, stiff neck, dizziness. If not treated or treated late, second stage, it shows symptoms like cardiac and neurological symptoms. Polyarthritis can attack joints, chronic neurological complication. The causative agent of this disease is Borrelia burgdorferi. Transmission of this disease, it is transmitted primarily by hard ticks of in the northeastern part of the United States, passes through a complex 2-year cycle that involves two principal hosts. It is cultured or diagnosed. It can be difficult to diagnose of the range of symptoms its presence, but it but ELISA for AB or PCR is used. Prevention of this disease is tick avoidance. Treatment of this disease is doxycycline uh, and or amoxicillin for a 3 to 4 weeks treatment. Cephalosporin and penicillin is also used. Infectious mononucleosis or mono is an infection usually caused by the Epstein-Barr virus. The virus spreads through the saliva, which is why it is sometimes called as kissing disease. Mono occurs most often in teens and young adults. However, you could get it at any age. Symptoms shows like sore throat, high fever, cervical lymphadenopathy, gray-white exudate in the throat, skin rash, and large spleen and liver, leukocytosis, and fatigue. Transmission of this disease is direct oral contact and contamination with saliva are the principal modes of transmission. Although transfer through blood transfusions, sexual contact, and an organ transplant is possible. Culture or diagnosis of this disease is differential blood count, monospot test for heterophile antibody specific ELISA. It can be treated by usual treatments are directed at symptomatic relief of fever and sore throat. Hospitalization is rarely needed.
Anthrax has been known as the zoonotic disease of herbivorous livestock, sheep, cattle, and goats. It is an important place in the history of medical microbiology because Robert Koch used anthrax as a model for developing his postulate in 1877, and later Louis Pasteur used the disease to prove the usefulness of vaccination. The signs and symptoms of anthrax. It can exhibit the primary symptoms in various locations of the body: on the skin, cutaneous anthrax; in the lungs, pulmonary anthrax; in the gastrointestinal tract, acquired through ingestion of contaminated foods; and in the central nervous system, anthrax meningitis. The cutaneous and pulmonary forms of the disease are the most common. In all of these forms, the anthrax bacterium gains access to the bloodstream and death, if it occurs, is usually a result of an overwhelming septicemia. The cause of agent. The Bacillus anthracis is a gram-positive endosperm-forming rod that is among the largest of all bacterial pathogens. It is composed of black-shaped, angular rods 3 to 5 micrometers long and 1 to 1.2 micrometers wide. Central endophores develop under all growth conditions except in the living body of the host. So the pathogenesis and virulence factors is the main virulence factor of Bacillus anthracis is what is referred to as tripartite toxin, an exotoxin complex composed of three separate proteins. One of the proteins is called edema factor, which increases cellular celiac AMP levels, leading to disruption of water balance and ultimately edema. Another part of the toxin is protective antigen, so named because it is good to target for vaccination, not because it protects the bacterium of the host directly. It helps the edema factor get to its target site. So the transmission and epidemiology. The anthrax bacillus is a facultative parasite that undergoes its cycles of vegetative growth and sporulation in the soil. So the culture and diagnosis. It requires a high index of suspicion. This means the anthrax must be present as a possibility in the clinician's mind, or it's likely not to be diagnosed because it is such a rare disease in the developed world, and because in all of its manifestation, it can mimic other infections that are not so rare. And how we will prevent and treat the anthrax. A vaccine containing live endosperm and a toxoid prepared from a special strain of Bacillus anthracis are used to protect livestock in areas of the world when anthrax is endemic. Humans should be vaccinated with the preferred toxoid. Currently, the only licensed human vaccine if they have occupational contact with livestock or products such as hides and bone if they are members of the military. So let's proceed in dengue fever. Dengue fever is caused by one of four related single-stranded RNA flavivirus carried by Aedes mosquitoes. Dengue fever is also called breakbone fever because of the severe pain it induces in muscles and joints. It does not actually cause fractures. The illness is endemic to South Asia and India, and several epidemics have occurred in South America and Central America, and, and the Caribbean and Mexico. Although dengue fever typically presents as a mild infection, a new form of disease called dengue hemorrhagic fever. So the chikungunya virus was discovered in 1955 and has caused sporadic outbreaks of disease since then. The name comes from an American phrase meaning that which bends up, a reference to arthritic stance people infected with the virus often assume. So the Lassa fever virus is arenavirus. Several related arenavirus cause the diseases Argentine hemorrhagic fever, Bolivian hemorrhagic fever, and lymphocytic choriomeningitis. So this means that although they because ill will endome. So the next is Scotch disease. This is one of the group of diseases caused by different species of small gram-negative rod Bartonella. Bartonella species are considered to be emerging zoonotic pathogens. They are fastidious but not obligate intracellular parasites, so they will grow on blood agar. In addition to Scotch disease and strange fever, discuss next a new species of Bartonella. Bartonella encephalitis, the agent of cat-scratch disease, an infection connected with being clawed or bitten by a cat. The pathogen is present in over 40% of cats, especially kittens. There are approximately 25,000 cases per year in the United States, 80% of them in children 2 to 14 years old. The symptoms start after 1 to 2 weeks with cluster of small papules of the size of inoculations. So the next is trench fever. This is as long as history. Trench fever was one of the common conditions of soldiers in battle. The causative agent, Bartonella quintana, is carried by lice. The vessels of the lice contain the bacterium, and transmission usually occurs when the vessel enters the bite wound. Most cases occur in the endemic regions of Europe, Africa, and Asia. Although the disease is raging in poverty-stricken areas of large cities in the developed world. So the next is Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So the disease is named for the region in which it was first detected in the United States. The Rocky Mountains of Montana and Idaho, in spite of its name, disease occurs infrequently in the western United States. The majority of cases are concentrated in the Southeast Asian eastern seaboard regions. So the next is the Chagas disease. The disease was described in chapter 5, and Chagas disease is sometimes called the American trypanomyces. The causative agent is Trypanosoma cruzi. A different trypanosome, Trypose, causes sleeping sickness on the African continent. The signs and symptoms. Once the trypanosomes are transmitted by a group of insects called the Triatominids, they multiply in mass in blood cells. From time to time, the blood cells rupture and large numbers of trypanosomes are released into the bloodstream. The disease manifestations are divided into acute and chronic phases. Soon after infection, the acute phase begins. Symptoms are relatively nondescript and range from mild to severe fever, nausea, and fatigue. A swelling called achagoma at the site of the bug bite may be present if the bug bite was close to the eyes, and distinct condition called Romana sign. Swelling of the eyelids may appear. The acute phase lasts for weeks or months, after which the condition becomes chronic and virtually asymptomatic for a period of years indefinitely. So the next is the cause agent. T. cruzi is a flagellated protozoan. Next is pathogenesis. Virulent factors is equipped with special antioxidant enzymes that act to neutralize the lysosomal attack of cells they infect. This allows it to live inside host cells without being killed by them. In addition, it can cloak itself in host proteins, disguising itself from the immune system. So the last is malaria. Throughout history, including prehistoric times, malaria has been one of the humankind's greatest affliction, in the same rank of the bubonic plague, influenza, and tuberculosis. Even now, thought to be dominant protozoan disease, it threatens 40% of the world's population every year. The origin of the name from the Italian was mal, bad, and aria, air. The design and symptoms after a 10 to 16-day incubation period, the first symptoms are malaise, fatigue, backs, aches, and nausea with or without diarrhea, followed by bouts or chills, fevers, and sweating. So the cause agents is Plasmodium species as protozoan in the sporozoan group. They are apicomplexan, which live in animal hosts and lack locomotor organelles in the mature states. So that's my end of my report.
So lastly, we have HIV. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. If left untreated, HIV can lead to disease AIDS. Acquired AIDS means acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Unlike some other viruses, the human body can't get rid of HIV completely. So once you have HIV, you have it for life. HIV attacks the body immune system, especially the CD4 cells or the T cells, which helps the immune system fight off infection. If left untreated, HIV reduces the number of the CD4 cells in the body, making the person most likely to get infection or infection related cancers. Over time, HIV can destroy so many of the cells that the body can't fight off infection and diseases. This opportunistic infection or cancer take advantage of a very weak immune system and signal the person that has AIDS the last state of HIV infection. Initial symptoms are fatigue, diarrhea, weight loss, neurological changes accompany severe immune deregulation, hormone imbalances, metabolic disturbances. Causative agent of this disease is lentivirus. The transmission of this disease is any intimate contact involving transfer of blood, semen, and vaginal secretion. Also harbor free virus and infected white blood cells. It can be diagnosed or cultured. It is initially screening for antibody followed by the Western blot confirmation of antibody. This is also an over-the-counter testing method called OraQuick, which can be found in any drugstore, which takes 20 to 40 minutes to know the results. Prevention of this disease is the avoidance of sexual contact with infected persons is the cornerstone of HIV prevention. Not sharing of syringes and needles is also a prevention. Treatment for this disease is synthetic nucleoside analogs, reverse transcriptase inhibitors, azidothioamide, diagnoside, and many more. They enter what they do is they interrupt the HIV multiplication cycle by mimicking the structure of actual nucleosides on being added to viral DNA by reverse transcriptase. However, until now they are still researching or finding for a better cure for this disease.